Do electric vehicles cause more pollution than gas cars? As we move into the future, electric vehicles are expected to take over the world. Since the first ever EVs went out on the roads all the way back in the 2000s, people have believed that this mode of transportation is cleaner and more sustainable than regular gas cars. But while electric cars are usually presented as non-polluting and zero-emission vehicles, that's not entirely true. So, do electric vehicles cause more pollution than gas cars? Let's find out. With companies like Tesla, General Motors, and Nissan bringing their EVs into the mainstream market, electric cars are expected to take over fossil fuel-powered vehicles by 2030. In fact, several governments are now actively pushing for the production of EVs so that they can help reduce the country's carbon emissions. In a world where gas cars make up 72% of the CO2 emissions in this sector, the market of electric cars has been growing and seems to be a good solution to fight climate change. Why? Well, because compared to conventional gas vehicles, electric vehicles release energy electrochemically instead of releasing it chemically with combustion, which is what regular cars do. That means that with EVs, you're essentially burning no fuel and therefore, you're not generating any kind of carbon emissions or carbon dioxide pollution. And this obviously shows exactly how electric vehicles are more environment friendly than your average old car that runs on gas. But how do EVs manage to do this? Well, the answer to this lies in its battery. Electric vehicles use lithium-ion batteries, which are bigger in size and work through a different kind of chemistry than lead-acid batteries used in gas vehicles. The biggest problem with lead-acid batteries is the fact that they run flat relatively quickly. Now, lithium-ion batteries are rechargeable, which is why they're sources of renewable energy, making them all the more sustainable and economical to use. But while this is one of the reasons behind EVs being more environment-friendly than conventional cars, EV batteries might also be the reason why switching to electric vehicles might not be such a good idea for the environment after all. Electric vehicles have always been under scrutiny when it comes to their actual production. One of the biggest reasons why people believe that EVs are more harmful than we think is because of the manufacturing process of their renewable batteries, which really aren't as clean for the environment as you might think. Lithium-ion batteries require a lot of energy to produce. So too does the extraction and refinement of metals like lithium, nickel, and cobalt. According to experts, they're also harder to recycle than lead-acid batteries. This means that the carbon emissions from making a single battery are way higher than what you eventually save. So is it really worth it? A 2015 study from the Union of Concerned Scientists found that manufacturing a battery for a mid-sized electric vehicle would produce about 15% more emissions than the process of building a similar one for a gas-powered vehicle would. For a bigger electric vehicle with a larger battery, that gap could grow to 68% or even more, adding massively to the company's carbon footprint, which has led to the speculation that widespread adoption of electric vehicles nationwide will likely increase air pollution compared with new internal combustion vehicles. That's right, more electric cars will mean more pollution instead of a cleaner environment. Another important factor is battery offsetting. Modern-day EVs have come a long way, and currently, it's true that they produce less than half of the global warming-related emissions as compared to gas-powered vehicles. Offsetting the emissions from manufacturing electric vehicles' batteries takes between 6 and 16 months. As far as gas vehicles go, well, they never really offset their manufacturing emissions, making EVs a better choice in this case. There's also a stark difference in emissions between electric vehicles and gas vehicle combustions over their overall lifetimes. The life cycle emission is a total figure for the combined emissions of the 3 stages of a vehicle's life: manufacturing, operation, and end of life. While during the manufacturing stage, EVs are definitely more responsible for generating more emissions, once the EVs are in motion, they outperform gas vehicles by a huge percentage. Why? Well, because electricity is generally cleaner and more renewable than the carbon emissions produced by gas vehicles. which is why people tend to gravitate towards EVs despite the whole issue with their battery manufacturing, because after all, the total impact of EVs on the environment is greater when you look at their entire lifetime, and combustion engines are practically unable to compete when you consider all of this. However, at the same time, it's true that lead-acid batteries are very easily recyclable. In fact, 99% of the lead-acid batteries in the USA are recycled. And because lithium-ion batteries have a completely different chemical makeup, they really don't make for very good recyclable material. For instance, in the European market in 2011, only 5% of lithium was being collected, and the rest was either incinerated or dumped in landfills because the price to recover it through hydrometallurgical processes was just too high. Not really clean and green, right? But at the same time, you don't really need to recycle lithium-ion batteries after all. Why? Well, because they're rechargeable, and according to research, charging your electric vehicles has absolutely no impact on the carbon footprint, making it a win-win situation. As far as the battery manufacturing process goes, experts believe that there might actually be a solution to the problem. All we need to do is figure out a way for this process to be powered by clean energy, which will ultimately reduce carbon emissions almost altogether. As EVs become more common and manufacturing becomes more widespread, battery recycling will also become more efficient and reduce the need to extract new materials, therefore lessening the reliance on mining and production of new batteries. Another solution could also be to reuse these batteries and give them a second life, since they are able to support the electric grid of buildings and to store energy from wind or solar electricity sources. This would also help offset the environmental impacts of making the batteries in the first place, because they would be used for a longer period of time than originally intended. Considering all of this, are electric vehicles zero-emission cars? No. While these cars don't generate emissions while being driven, the pollution they generate manufacturing, production, and at the end of their life cycle is too large to be ignored. However, it's also important to understand that with time, EV manufacturers are trying to figure out more sustainable methods of production, so we definitely still have hope. Which means that electric vehicles definitely don't cause more pollution than gas cars when you consider their overall life cycles, regardless of the energy source. With almost all giant car manufacturers accepting the fact that electric cars are less polluting and that producing more EVs will help reduce total carbon emissions, it's safe to say that electric cars are going to be the future of environment-friendly transport.